Good morning. If you're starting from scratch in 2026 on a budget, here are the Sony setups I would buy and why. I'm going to give you a few camera and lens options that can get you great results without wasting money. And yes, I'm going to say it right away, the ZV-E10 II that many recommend is a very bad choice for a lot of photographers. So make sure you watch until the end because I'll explain exactly why and help you avoid a big mistake. Quick thanks to PPA for sponsoring part of this video, and let's get right into it. Don't worry, I'll tell you later how they can save you thousands of dollars if your gear gets stolen or damaged. Yes, that happens. Woo! So let's dig right into it. There are so many options out there, honestly, that it can be overwhelming to say the least. And everyone has a different opinion almost. So right away, comment your ideal budget number in your next setup and maybe which camera you're looking at. I'm very curious. Here's an important public service announcement before we go any further in this video and talk about gear. To take great photos you are proud of, there are three very important factors. Honestly, the first one is your skills. Those will be with you no matter what kind of gear you're using. So work as a priority first on your skill, even with your phone, while you save money for your gear. Second is going to be your lens. Marketing will make you believe that the camera body is most important, right? We've all heard of your camera takes great photos, how many pixels do you have, the latest and best innovation, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, the lens matters more than the camera body in this day and age. The lens is the key to getting beautiful bokeh, shallow depth of field, shooting easily in low light, and making your subjects pop easily. It's better to have a cheaper camera body and get a great lens than the contrary. And now finally, third, your camera body comes last for most users. So let's tackle the camera body first and then the lens and why you shouldn't get a ZV-E10 for photography. So let's dive into the first part, camera bodies. When it comes to the camera body, I propose two options for the sensor. The full frame sensor or the APS-C sensor. Those two options are great, but they have differences. Think of the sensor like a window. Full frame is a big window and lets in more light, so you get clear low light, less noise, and often more dynamic range. But the trade-off is that it's usually bigger, heavier, and more expensive, especially when you add lenses. APS-C is a smaller window. It's still great quality, but because it's smaller, it's like you're going through a tighter frame. It crops in, so your lenses feel more zoomed in. On Sony APS-C, that crop factor is 1.5 times. So if I have a 20mm lens on an APS-C, that lens is the same field of view as a 30mm on a full frame. And add to that, the bokeh will be different. If you keep the same composition, full frame looks shallower at the same aperture. On APS-C, to get a similar blur, you usually go about one stop wider. But don't worry, honestly, you can still get that creamy bokeh on an APS-C camera, just like you see in those photos. That's why I'm sharing with you a few APS-C setups for maximal value and a full frame setup if you need that extra low light and depth of field advantage. So APS-C quality is so good that for 90% of you, it is probably the smartest way to start and the most cost efficient. I suggest if you're on a tight budget to buy secondhand. It's not worth paying the extra for brand new when you can get great used deals. From the cheapest option to a bit more expensive, let's get started. The Sony a6300 can be found around $400 used. It's a 24 megapixel camera. It's great value. It's solid autofocus, 4K, tough body. Why buy it? Honestly, it's the cheapest series Sony APS-C that still feels that it's relevant in some way. Why I wouldn't get it is because it has no IBIS, which is in-body stabilization, and it's an older generation with menus, screens. The low light performance is not up to what's being done nowadays, and same for the autofocus. Then you have the Sony a6500, around $500 to $600 used on the used market. Also 24 megapixel, but it has touchscreen and IBIS. So I would buy it because IBIS is great for handheld shooting, but I would not buy it because it's still older, the battery life isn't great, and overall the responsiveness isn't as good as the newer models, honestly. It kind of feels old. Next, we have the a6400, around $700 to $800 used. 2019, that's when it came out. We still have those 24 megapixel, but the autofocus got a real jump with the real-time tracking. Plus, we've got the flip-up screen Why I would buy it is because it's the best bang for your buck in autofocus in this older 24 megapixel generation. And why I wouldn't get it? Because it has no IBIS, so for handheld video or low shutter speeds, you'll feel it. And the battery life is really not good because it's still the old, smaller batteries. Now, don't get confused, the A6500 came out before the A6400 in 2016 versus 2019. I know, it's super confusing. I don't know why Sony does that. So moving on next, we have the A6600, great camera, around $800 to $900 used. So you see the difference is not massive between a 6400 and a 6600 on the used market. So you still have the 24 megapixel sensor, but now you have a big Z batteries, those batteries that actually are in tons of Sony cameras, which is an advantage because that means if you're upgrading later, well, you'll be keeping your extra batteries. You won't have to change them necessarily. It also has in-body stabilization and a headphone jack if you're doing video, very helpful. Why would buy it? It's the most complete 24 megapixel APS-C body for photo and video right now on the budget, I would say. But I wouldn't get it because the price, you're getting close to the newer tech, and should you just spend a few more $100? I don't know. Honestly, between A65 or A6400 and A6600, I would definitely wait a little bit to get the A6600 on the used market at a good price. Now, if you're wondering, to make it more confusing, the A6100 came out in 2019 also. It's the same wave as the 6600. And I told you the name is super confusing in this lineup, but it's basically a cheaper version of the 6600, and it has no IBIS and not the newer battery and a plastic body. I personally don't recommend. Forget about it. On the used market, your 6600 will be a better deal. And just so you know, those photos are taken with APS-C cameras, so you can absolutely take great photos. Now, we'll talk about it, but the lens will be essential, and the choice that I will suggest will really make a big difference. Now, let's talk about the king of APS-C if you have that budget. So the Sony A6700, it's about 1.4 to 1.5K used, and it's just below 1.6K new. So I personally wouldn't buy it used because there's a $100 to $200 difference with the new one without the warranty and all that. So that's a camera you would buy, in my opinion, new on a great deal that you can find online, or wait until the next generation comes out, and then that one on the second-hand market is going to drop much lower. What do I love about it? So this camera is the 26 megapixel sensor. I've shot with it. It's incredible. It has the new sensor technology, and it has really a crazy autofocus that locks in and stays strong. It's also very strong in video, honestly, and why I would buy it, it's honestly the best all-rounder. It has modern AF with AI detection. It's kind of future-proof, but I wouldn't get it because of the price. At this point, you need to ask yourself if your budget is not better spent on that lens, especially if you go from $800 to a 6600 to $800 more for a 6700 new. So, real trade-offs, but you'll see the lens is so impactful that you need to consider that. Overall, that A6700 is a beast, honestly, and my experience with it made me wonder why I had the full frame camera at the time. I remember when I tested it. The AF, the color science, the battery life, the IBIS, and the latest Sony had to offer was put inside, and the price, that's why it's much higher. But honestly, maybe 6600 with extra cash for the lens, maybe a better deal if you are tight. Now, if you're really tight, like I said, maybe that A6500 with IBIS is a good option if you want that IBIS. If you don't want it, that A6400 may be a better choice. Between the A6300 and 500, the price difference doesn't make sense going for the A6300, so just get the A6500. Now, if you're hitting the A6600 and the A6700 budgets, maybe you're entering the full frame recommendations that I have for you. So let's jump right into it. But before you buy gear, have you considered insurance to cover the gear in case of theft or damage? If you don't, check out PPA. PPA stands for Professional Photographers of America, and it's in the company that provides equipment coverage that protects your gear, whether it's stolen, damaged, or lost, and it goes beyond just replacing your camera. They also provide legal support, copyright protection, education, and even help with data recovery if your memory cards are compromised. Through PPA, you can get up to $15,000 of gear insurance, $50 flat deductible for equipment repairs, and $350 deductible for full replacements of equipment lost. Make sure if you have a drone that you add the drone policy. Honestly, sponsor or not, I just renewed my yearly membership because I want those benefits. So if you want to save $25 on your membership and cover your gear, sign up with the link in the description. Now let's talk about full frame. To get on the low light, bokeh, and overall full frame look, you're going to pay more. And not only for the body, honestly. The real cost is in the full frame lenses. There are a few full frame bodies that I don't recommend in 2026, especially the A7 II, which can be found around $500 to $600 used. It's 24 megapixel, has APS. Yes, it can still take great photos, but honestly, it's a 2014 camera. The battery life is really rough and the menu feels ancient. Autofocus is behind and the whole experience is just, I would say, slower for something that is not smaller. And here's a real problem. Buying a cheap full frame body also pushes you into more expensive full frame lenses. So in the end, you spend more money for worse overall setup. If you're going on a budget, you're often better off with something like a 6400 and put that money into lenses. The total setup will be a better value. But now enter the A7 III. If you can stretch to $800 to $1,000 on the used market, this could be a sweet spot. You got 24 megapixels, full frame, much better autofocus, great battery life with the newer batteries, and it's a real workhorse. Low light is excellent. It can handle almost anything. And if you can afford full frame lenses, this can be a killer setup. I've used that camera and abused it for years, and I took shots I'm absolutely super proud of with that camera. Now, a couple quick notes so you don't ask in the comments. The A7C, yes, it's a great option, and we are going over $1,000 on the used version. It's an A7 III in a tiny package. It's solid if you want that small full frame camera body. The A7 IV and A7C II, I'm skipping them honestly here because the used prices are still too close to the new one. And once you're around $2,000, well, honestly, that's not a budget friendly camera setup in my opinion. So you can watch my other video that goes in details about something that's less limited in pricing. And last, I would actually stay away from the used A7 IV because the shutter had known issues and I had a few friends, their shutter broke, so I would be careful if I were to buy it secondhand. Now, if you're going for the vibe, if you really want something that is a unique experience, grab a RX1 or 2 secondhand. It's a bit old, the menus too, but it's an A7R3 42 megapixel sensor and the smallest full frame body ever with a fixed 35mm f2 lens. It's a great experience. It makes everyday photography awesome. And you can watch my other videos and on the field videos to see how it handles. But this is a camera that make you fall in love with photography for the everyday. I will say that. Now it's a fixed lens, there's drawbacks, and on the used markets, it's around the $1,500, but why not? And I've had so much fun and shot such great photos with it that I do recommend it. By the way, if you want the settings that I use as starting point to help on the field, please grab my free photography cheat sheet. It's linked in the description. Now, the bodies are done. Let's tackle the lenses. And just after that, I'll reveal why I'm calling out the ZV-E10 as a terrible option. I need to explain that. So, lenses. Let's go. Let's talk. I love lenses. Lenses are so fun. I'm starting with the APS-C. Why? Because that's where you're going to get the best value. And then I'll show you the full frame equivalents and the different setups. With lenses, you're usually trading versatility for aperture. So the smaller the f number, for example 1.8, the more light you let in your camera. And that means that you can keep your ISO lower, shoot easier in low light, and get that shallower depth of field, that better bokeh, subject popping. Watch my video on the camera basics here if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Now, most of those wide aperture lenses are primes. One focal length and one field of view. You can't change it, you have to move. Which is a great thing to do as a beginner or when you're trying actually to get better in photography because it forces you to think differently. If you want to zoom in and out, you usually trade aperture for range, except for a few real lenses that I will mention as my go-to choices. So for the APS-C system, no brainer, honestly, there are tons of great options at great prices if you're on a tight budget. Drum rolls and you want portraits, low light, fun bokeh, start with a prime. Okay, you're going to have your little camera with the prime. Honestly, it's going to be fun. You're going to move in and out. Viltrox has amazingly cheap options for us. We've got the 25mm f1.7, great for family travel, everyday, and a bit of landscape. We've got the 35mm f1.7 and the 56mm 1.7, which is for tighter photos and portrait because that's equivalent to almost what is that? It's an 85 millimeter lens, a little wider. I will give you that. You don't need to look at the 1.4 unless you want to spend extra. Those 1.7 options are great, especially if you have that kit lens that came with your camera. Then don't bother getting another zoom. Honestly, just keep a prime. That kit lens honestly can do anything that doesn't require shooting with a small f-stop like landscape, for example. With the right skills, that kit lens can do marvel. Invest in those first, your skills. For example, I cover all that in the 30-day course. That's linked below. My zoom recommendations, if you want one for versatility, are going to be the Sigma 1850 f2.8. It comes in at about 659 USD new and it allows for a good light performance, a decent bokeh, and a good range. Honestly, it's equivalent to that 27 to 75 millimeter on full frame, which is the most versatile range ever. You may just be a little frustrated that you're not super wide on the lower end. Then comes the Sony 1655 f2.8. It's kind of a premium legendary option for the APS-C market. It has faster autofocus, great performance, a little more range, around 24 to 82 millimeter equivalent. And the problem is that it's expensive. So it's about $1,500 new, but I actually saw some for around $800 on the used market. So maybe look for a good deal. Could be a great option. Then last but not least, the bokeh king that I've recommended a lot when it used to be for the DSLR, and the mirrorless version of it nowadays is the Sigma 17 to 40 millimeter f1.8. Yes, you heard me. It's a zoom at 1.8 constant. It costs around $950 new, and it's basically a prime in a zoom. Your range is equivalent to 27 to 60 millimeter. I've recommended this lens a lot. Honestly, I love that lens. It's a little bigger and a little heavier, but you will not regret it on the field going, especially if you're coming from a kit lens to that. It's going to change how you experience your photos and your portraits. Now you may be asking, what about the longer range? Well, I'm not a fan of the do-it-all zooms like a 16 to 300 millimeter. But if you really want that range, combine it with a cheap prime lens so you're not frustrated in low light to get bokeh in your photos and when you're trying to do cool portraits, and getting rid of that background. Same to start, I don't recommend going ultra wide like a Sigma 10-18 millimeter. Why? Because it requires more skill, in my opinion, to get good photos with wide lenses. So work first on your skills and then consider wider lenses. For the curious, all the photos you've seen are edited with my Lightroom presets that are available below. So please check them out if you want to save time and edit your photos faster. Now, if you decide to go the full frame route, are you ready for the lenses? For example, I love this one. It's a little special, but yeah. On full frame, everything is bigger, it's heavier, it's pricier, but you can still get good deals. So prime-wise, let's keep it simple. I'd recommend a Viltrox 50mm f2, 40mm f2.5 for everyday travel, street, and portraits, and a 85mm f1.8 used from Sony, for example, for around $300. For tighter shots and portraits, 85mm is great. I have it in my hand. I've used it for years, and it's a cheap lens that I recommend all the time and that I throw in my bag whenever I don't want to carry big stuff. Now, if you want to go wider, look for Sony or Sigma 24 or 35mm prime lens on the secondhand market, or even get a new 7 Artisans 35-1.8 under $300, but I haven't personally tested it, so I don't know what it's worth. Sometimes we say you get what you pay for, but is that true for that one? I'm not sure. Zoom-wise, the almighty 24-70 f2.8 is here for you on the second-hand market, and at around $1,319 new for the Sigma version. It's not worth paying for the Sony version, seeing all the tests. If you are on a budget, just get the Sigma version. The latest one, the version 2, is at that price, and honestly, it's an amazing option, and the test will show you that it's very hard to tell the difference. It will make a difference if you're shooting high bursts, because Sony kind of blocks third-party lenses from shooting at higher than 11 or 15 frames per second, but if you don't have a 7.5, it doesn't matter to you. If you don't have a 1 or a 9.3, it doesn't matter. Well, now another great alternative for the 24-70 that's a little pricey. If you want to go on the cheaper end, look for a Tamron 28 to 75mm V2 and f2.8. It is a lens that you can find for less than $800. It's going to be a little more compact, but you may have some quality trade-offs. But I don't think if you're starting, they're that massive that they will be a hindrance. On the contrary, maybe the fact that it's a little lighter and smaller may help you get on the field a little more with it. And it's going to be significantly lighter because we're 300 grams less than the 2470. So this may be a great advantage when you're just starting off or when you're building your kit to actually have something that you will carry with you all the time. If you can get a good deal, maybe get a used 2450 f2.8 from Sony. I'd highly recommend it because the form factor is amazing. It's small and light and compact. It makes for a great all-rounder lens. Even if you lose a little bit of that 50 to 70 millimeter range, the weight gain and size is very interesting to me. And it's a setup I love, especially combined with a smaller full-frame body. So honestly, with these zoom lenses, you don't need any other lens unless you're shooting animals or birds, and you may want to consider, for example, a 70-100 f4 or 70-300 or 24-105 f4, but that 105 millimeter won't reach the far away animals, and I would say your telephoto zooms may come later down in your practice as a photographer, or may feel more relevant later. So now, what about the do-it-all zooms like the Sigma 20-200 f3.5, 6.3, or the Tamron 28-200? Well, I get it. It's super tempting. It's a massive range. But honestly, for me, that variable aperture is a deal breaker. So unless you're basically shooting daytime landscapes or travel in good light, always bright light, as soon as the light drops, you'll feel it. Your ISOs are going to crank up very fast. Maybe that 35-150 from Tamron f2 2.8 could be a good option if you can get a really good deal on it. But other than that, I would stay on what I suggested earlier. Those are also getting massive, especially that Tamron one. And remember, if you're beginning and your gear is big, you're less likely to take it with you, which means you're less likely to shoot and you're more likely to drop photography altogether very fast. That's why that RX1 or 2 sometimes it's kind of cool just to get started. You know, you're not going to be tempted to buy more lenses after. Look, I'll expand more in another video for full frame as these starts to get expensive very fast. We're talking now lenses that are over $1,000 very, very quickly. So for now, those are my recommendations. But now, why do I not recommend that ZV-E10? All right, let's get that straight. That's going to annoy some people, but generally, I'm shocked at how often I see the ZV-E10 and ZV-E10 II being recommended for photography. I get it. On the ZV-10 II, you get that APS-C 26 megapixel sensor, flip out screen, great video features, good battery, but there's a huge problem that no one's mentioning. It has an electrolytic shutter only, no mechanical shutter. All the options I gave you have mechanical shutters. Why is it such an issue? Well, if you're shooting indoors under LED lights in a gym, in a store, at an event, or basically anywhere where there is artificial lighting, even happens with cars, you get bending issues. Those are the ugly dark lines across your image that you can't get rid of afterwards. And when those dark line happens, you can't just flip your camera to the mechanical shutter to fix it because there isn't one on that ZV-E10. So sometimes you can reduce it by changing the shutter speed or having some option, but you can't rely on that. And in some places, honestly, it's still very messy. I constantly have to stop using electronic shutter and go to mechanical shutter to avoid those issues. I've also had tons of photographers in the 30-day course ask those questions because they had electronic shutter cameras only and they were getting bending issues, not knowing what to do or why and how to recover their photos. All right, I'm editing the video. I realized that I did not mention something. With the ZV-E1, why I don't recommend it is because it doesn't have a viewfinder. So if you don't have a viewfinder, your experience in photography can be real annoying, especially if you're trying to shoot in bright daytime. It's actually really nice to have, even if it's a tiny viewfinder, it makes a big difference. So I say if you do landscape and stuff, it's maybe fine that ZV-E2, but if you need that viewfinder in bright daytime and to review your photos, may not be the best experience, honestly. So that's why it's not on top of my list, and it's honestly a video first camera. So unless you're a video shooter first and you shoot outdoors in natural light for photography, I would not choose that ZV-E10 for photography, nor the 2. Comment A if you agree and N if you don't, and leave this video a big thumbs up if these tips have been helpful so far. So if you bring it together, you can get one of those APS-C camera with prime lenses for literally less than $700. It is pretty amazing, and those different combos that you can bring together are great and will allow you to really progress, take great photos, and use that budget for your skills or travel, which will make the biggest impact actually on your photos. If you want my baseline settings and shortcuts, grab the free photography cheat sheet in the description and watch this video to avoid the common photography mistakes, and watch this one in order to nail your autofocus for sharp photos. Now get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. I'll see you in the next one.